Hello, you're listening to Count Richard von Coudenhove Kalergi. Today is Sunday, the 29th of December, and here's a couple of comments since my last video. It's been released that birth rates in Ireland for 2019 are the lowest level since 2009, when 75,500 children were born, and this has dropped to 61,000, and a drop of a further 800 on 2018, and yet the population of this country is increasing. And if you look, last year they reckon up to 90,000 people came into Ireland, 30,000 from within the EU, 30,000 were from returning Irish, and 30,000 were from outside the EU, with roughly 50,000 people leaving the country. So you can see the population is actually being slowly but surely replaced. And if you factor in the effect that the global compact on migration will actually have on this as well. And it also was announced that nearly 1 million passports were issued during 2019, extraordinary figure, and a 7% increase on the previous year, with 94,500 from the UK and Northern Ireland. And it's believed, allegedly, as a result of Brexit, that people are concerned that they are renewing their Irish citizenship. And it's believed that up to, I think, the 70, up to spending, which it's quite hard to find, but they believe there's up to 70 million Irish passports in the world. And if you think, for a country of its size, that the influence it's actually had on both culture and civilization, from the arrival of St. Patrick in Ireland, to the monks clinging on like limpets to the Skelligs out in the Atlantic Ocean, to the effect it's had on saving Christian civilization back into Europe, I think we need to remind ourselves of our culture and heritage. And it was also been announced as well that direct provision this year, strangely enough, has cost the state a whopping 120 million of taxpayers' money. The state runs 7 of these direct provision centres, with a further 32 that are privately owned. Now, some of these centres are actually making so much money that they've gone from limited companies to unlimited companies, so they don't have to publish statutory accounts, and quite a few of them are actually registered in the Isle of Man. So you can see where David Stanton, before Christmas there, said it was costing roughly €35 per head. You can see that figure is not correct at all, especially when you factor in the emergency accommodation. And it is believed that within the coming years this figure could rise as high as 300 million. And yet we have 10,000 homeless Irish and a housing crisis. Now, something that did bring a smile to me this week was appearance of graffiti on the mural of David Attenborough on the side of a house on the South Circular Road, which said "Climate Hoax." Now, some of the graffiti was up as high as 20 feet, so either they used a very exceptionally tall man, which I hope will be playing basketball for Ireland sometime. But it's great to see that this graffiti on graffiti, as it was an illegal mural, that somebody is not buying all this narrative on the climate hoax. And in fact, it has been found out that in some of Attenborough's documentaries, including one there recently which showed walruses, that he had falsified information and the narrative of what was actually happening. So that was interesting to see and it made onto quite a few Twitter pages, and the media such as the Journal and other newspapers. Now, I've always been a fan of David Attenborough, especially his series Life in the Freezer. I think it's one of the most beautiful documentary series ever made, and it can still name so many penguins: Emperor, King, Gen 2, Rockhopper, Daily, Macaroni, as a result of it. But and I've always enjoyed the expeditions of Shackleton and Crean, who spent more time in Antarctica than anybody else, with 3 Antarctic expeditions from Scott to Shackleton. And interestingly enough, during the War of Independence, after Crean opened up a pub in Anniscall called the South Pole Inn, his pub was raided by the British Army, and he was being brought outside, probably to be shot, only upon the discovery of his 3 polar medals in an upstairs drawer, which saved his life. And for a man that spent so much time down in Antarctica, for him to die of appendicitis at quite an early age is tragic, but a very interesting character indeed. And another one that caught my attention this week was in the UK that they discovered that their electric police vehicles aren't as effective as they thought they would be, with spending £1.5 million leasing and buying these electric vehicles, which have unfortunately not really been suitable for car chasing, considered they're liable to run out, and have been withdrawn from official duties to non-emergency situations and to bring police officials around. Now, I had an interesting conversation this week with a young lady who really bought into the narrative of privilege, and I brought up the topic of the Global Compact on Migration, which she never heard of, but she felt that I mentioned to her as well about the number of agencies involved with racism in Ireland, and she came to the staggering conclusion that only white people could be racist. So I asked her, is it possible for black people to be racist towards white? And she said, no, definitely not. They can only make derogatory terms because we, as Irish, are speaking from a position of privilege. And she was in full agreement with Charlie Flanagan bringing in these new hate speech laws. So I have to say, while steam was coming out my ears, I kept my composure and decided that the conversation should end at that point. But I found it extraordinary that for such a nice young girl to have so much bought into this narrative of guilt was quite unbelievable. So I think 2019 rolling into 2020 is going to be a very interesting year for us patriots. And it was very nice to meet so many of my subscribers in different demonstrations. And I really appreciate your comments and people coming up and saying hello to me. It's nice to think that my humble efforts are appreciated. But I'd like to end on a quote, if I may please, from Matthew 5, chapter 5, verse 15. Be on your guard against false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but underneath are wolves. On the prowl, you will know them by their deeds. Because they really have to be on guard this year, because especially with the threat of Charlie Flanagan's hate speech laws and who will control the narrative of speech, that really are interesting times. But I believe that there is a spiritual and political revival in this country, and I strongly suggest that to all patriots to actually get a copy of the Bible and read it every day. Spend it a couple of minutes, take a nice cup of coffee if you have the time, either before work or in the evening. Spend a couple of minutes, just read, start with the Gospels and work your way through. And I think you'll find it very interesting, and I believe that the Logos in this country is rising, and I look forward to seeing what's happening in the new year. So I wish you all a happy new year, and God bless you all, and thanks for listening. Good night and good luck.